Seth and I have been best friends for the past 8 years. And while we have some interests and hobbies that overlap, for the most part, we enjoy very different things. We're not pros, we're just fanboys. Fanboys, the podcast where we catch you up on what we care about. I'm Joe.
I'm Seth.
And Seth, how are you surviving week 30 of quarantine? I don't even know, man.
It might be week 7 because this is episode 7 of the podcast, and I'm pretty sure we started it right as this whole thing was getting.
Oh my gosh, you're so right.
Going. So, yeah, it's been like a whole Lent's worth of quarantine. Which is just we just all decided to give up, I don't know, going outside for Lent. So
I guess we did. Jeez. Well, I don't want to think about being inside. I want to think about the things we have done. I want to talk about our 5 questions.
Yeah. What are they, Joe?
Seth, the 5 questions that we like to ask each week are: what are you watching? What are you listening to? What are you reading? What are you playing? What are you wearing?
The most important question for our primarily audio-focused medium. We make the same joke every week. It keeps getting funnier and funnier.
It's funnier and funnier. At some point, someone's going to laugh. We'll keep making the joke until someone does. Seth.
Yes.
What are you watching?
Well, this week, listeners of our podcast would probably be able to guess that this weekend specifically, I watched the NFL draft. If you want to know all about the NFL draft, you can go listen to episode 6 of the Lonely Fanboys podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts, not Spotify. That was a whole thing last week. I watched the whole NFL draft this weekend. I watched almost every pick. I skipped the 4th round because the Packers traded away their 4th round pick. Oh. I'm so sad. The Packers had a terrible draft. Pretty much every draft analyst has rated the Packers draft as the worst in the NFL.
Wow.
Which is very sad for a fan base that's used to a lot of success. So we're taking it kind of hard. Keep us in your prayers. Joe, what are you watching?
Well, first I just got to ask, are you okay?
What are you watching, Joe?
Okay. Well, this week, Anne and I watched a favorite of mine, the sci-fi film Ex Machina.
Oh, with sexy Oscar Isaac in it.
Sexy Oscar Isaac and cutie patootie Domhnall Gleeson.
Yes.
And this was actually a movie that I have fond memories of watching with you.
Yes, I also have fond memories of that. It's also one of my favorite movies, maybe of all time. I think it's
wow,
really good.
Yeah, it's a fantastic movie. It's really great. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's kind of all around the idea of the Turing test, where if you can convince someone to if you can trick someone into having a conversation with a robot and then believing that they're talking to a real person, then you've successfully created AI.
Yep.
And so this movie goes really deep into that. And it's, suspenseful. It's a thriller. It has some fantastic effects for being a low budget film.
No kidding.
Yeah. And, it was really fun watching it again. Anna had never seen it before and she was on the edge of her seat the entire time.
Can you remind me, is it an A24 movie?
It is an A24
I think it was the first A24 movie I ever saw.
Nice.
Shout out to A24.
What are you listening to, Seth?
I have been listening to, this is thanks to that Bill Clinton swag meme that's been going around where you post Bill Clinton with your 4 favorite albums. I went on Spotify and just looked up the 4 albums that I've listened to the most since I've had Spotify. And tops on the list was an album by Watsky, which is Cardboard Castles. It was like my go-to in high school, and I really haven't listened to it since I came to college, and especially since graduating from college. So I've been listening to it again all this week, and it has thrown me all the way back to being 15 and angsty and broke. Well, I'm still broke, but like, you know, a different kind of broke. It's been a real nostalgia trip this week. Highly recommend Cardboard Castles
this
by
is
Watsby.
quickly becoming an entirely nostalgia driven podcast, because when you bring up that album, I immediately go to like the two of us in the summer driving around in your your clunky little car.
Oh, shout out to Egbert.
Your lovely little car Egbert, and just driving around with the windows down listening to that album.
That car did have
fantastic.
a sunroof. It was a small little sunroof, but it did have one, and that was
Did we
great.
ever open it?
I had it open sometimes. We never ever just like stood up in it and stood out the sunroof, which I think was a wasted opportunity. Joe, what have you been listening to?
Well, a little while back, you sent me a little thing on the Facebooks, and it was
as I am wont to do.
As you am wont to do. And it was a bracket of, geez, I don't even know how many emo songs, and it was 64 emo songs, and it was trying to figure out which was the best of the best. And you and Jordan and Anna and I went through the brackets, and we tried to make our own brackets, and then we fought about it. It was a lot of fun. It was a great little distraction during these crazy times.
It was great. Jordan and I spent like a whole afternoon on that, and then there was another one out there with like emo bands, and so then after doing that, I don't know, that's been in my rotation too, of just like listening to all these throwback emo songs. We're just listening. We are really becoming a nostalgia podcast.
Yeah.
Which is weird for two guys in their early 20s. We're already so nostalgic for a better time.
We're already so nostalgic. Oh my gosh. And, you know, the funniest thing about the bracket is it was almost a non-starter because you sent it to me. And I just texted you back immediately, like, why are we even doing this? Welcome to the Black Parade is obviously the winner. It has to be. It's like the Bohemian Rhapsody of emo kids.
It absolutely is.
Like, and you play that little piano riff, and everyone starts singing, and you know who we grew up with.
You play that first G note of the piano riff, and everybody knows exactly what's going down.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. But what have you been playing?
I have been playing, in theme with the NFL draft, I've been playing a little Madden 20. Madden is by far the best football video game that's ever come out. And if, in my opinion, maybe the best sports game that's come out. NBA 2K is right up there with it. But that's only because Madden runs on like a 2-year cycle of updating their engine, like their physics engine.
Sure.
So Madden 20 is the first year with this new physics engine, and so it took about 6 months of updates and patches for them to actually get it right, and it's still not perfect. Sometimes things happen that are just like really weird. So Madden 21 will be a really good game. The odd numbered Maddens are always better than the even numbered Maddens. But Madden 20 is great just because I was able to like import the draft class and take control of a team, and then one of my friends took control of another team, and we like played through the whole draft, and then we've played like several seasons out now to see how, you know, these stars from this last draft, like how they're doing now, who were the booms, who were the busts. It's been really fun, and it made it really fun to watch the draft and go like, oh, I know that guy. According to Madden, in 3 years, he's going to be like a superstar. Or sure. that guy's gonna like get hurt so many times next year. Like I can tell because Madden told me.
That's awesome. I am so excited for you. Confession: I don't think I've ever played a Madden game.
Oh man. Okay.
Yeah, ever.
That might have to be the subject of a future episode then.
Maybe.
I've got a good amount of Madden lore to store away in my little brain there.
We're quickly becoming just a football podcast.
Yeah, we truly are. It's my dream. What have you been playing, Joe?
So I was looking around on the eShop on the Nintendo Switch the other day, and I came across a great sale. Ubisoft was doing a big sale, I think last week. I believe it's over already.
Oh man!
But okay. They had Urban Trials Playground for $3.
Yeah.
And so I scooped that up.
The motorcycle game, right?
Yeah, it's a motorcycle game, and I started playing, and we're going to keep going with nostalgia. Motorcycle games, I feel like I've always played. I don't have a time in my life where I don't remember not playing a motorcycle game, because I used to play all of the Flash games on addictinggames.com as a kid. And when I was in 8th grade, I got really obsessed with the series of YouTubers who would do prank calls.
Okay.
And while they were doing their prank calls, they would show footage of the Trials games.
Wow.
And so I would just watch them play and then like laugh at their really horrible prank calls where, you know, they'd call like they'd call Domino's Pizza and mess with them and stuff like that. But yeah, and so this little game, it's really it's a nice little pickup for $3 especially. I had a lot of fun, you know, just zipping around and doing tricks. There are a ton of different creative maps, none of them as like huge and chaotic as some of the past Trials games. There's no big loop-de-loops or anything like that, but you know, it's for $3. I had a great time.
Yeah, when I first got my PS4 about a year and a half ago, it was Urban Trials was free for PlayStation Plus users.
Oh, nice.
And so I got it then, and it was, you know, I had gotten like that and like Assassin's Creed Odyssey or something. Those were like the two games on my PS4 that I played for the first like week that I had my PS4, and it was awesome. It was, you know, I never played more than, you know, a couple hours of it. But it's a nice, it's a good motorcycle game.
Totally. And when you're just like chilling on your couch with Gilmore Girls on in the background, you can just, you know, relax and tilt the joystick a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right and hope that he gets to the end. It's just a fun, you know, mindless kind of game. I love it.
That's life, isn't it? Little to the left, little to the right, hope you get to the end.
Seth, what are you wearing?
That's 2 weeks in a row. You're trying to fake me out, and I'm not gonna fall for it this time. I'm just gonna answer.
What are you not gonna? I don't understand. I don't understand what you're talking about.
I'm just gonna answer.
What you're talking
I'm
about,
gonna answer you right now.
Wait, no, but come on.
Okay, go ahead.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
With your fancy new microphone.
What are you wearing?
Oh, it sounds about the same. That's really nice. You upgraded the sound quality of that bit. That's awesome. I'm wearing just this nice little yellow t-shirt. It's nice and bright. I got some blue shorts on because I can't dress myself. And it's summer up here. It's 74 degrees in Minneapolis today, and so I'm living that outside life. Except that I've been inside all day editing videos and then recording a podcast. But I'm looking out the window and imagining that I'm living that outside life.
I'm so jealous. It's cold and rainy here and unpleasant, which leads to.
Are you dressed for the weather, Joe?
Please ask.
Joe?
Yes.
What are you wearing?
It's back, ladies and gentlemen. It's cozy. It's comfy. It's my hoodie.
The fans are going wild in the stands.
The fans are going nuts. He's wearing his hoodie again.
Joe's hoodie. We love Joe's hoodie.
We do. Did some laundry this morning, and it's nice and straight from the dryer. I was about to say oven.
Nope. I hope not.
It's straight from the dryer, and it's warm and cozy, and it makes me so happy.
That makes me happy for you.
Excellent.
I'm glad you washed it. It's an important clarification.
Yes, it's good, clean, and cozy. Seth, oh, shoot.
Yeah. What?
I think we forgot a question.
Oh, wait, you're totally right. We totally skipped one.
Shoot.
It's the last time you get to ask the questions.
I guess. What are you watching, listening, playing, wearing?
Reading, Joe. Reading.
You don't
have to be reading.
Well, Seth, what have you been reading?
I've been reading our fan mail.
Our fan mail?
Oh, yeah. We got another letter. That almost turned into the Blues Clues song, and then I was worried we would get copyright striked for that, and made a quick pivot. We have a letter from a fan. Let me read it to you. Are you ready?
I'm so ready.
This letter goes, "Hey guys, what's up? I really liked episode 4 of the Lonely Fanboys. Should have read it last week or 2 weeks ago.
Oops.
Oh well. Definitely one of my favorites just because it was super well put together and I've been wanting to learn more about Animal Crossing. It's a great episode. You guys can go back and re-listen to it if you want. I am considering maybe getting a Switch soon. Any tips? Also, I think it would be super cool if you all did a video talking about like board games you've been playing or like doing an episode of the top 10 where you rate your top 10 something. Sincerely, what up, girl?"
Thank you so much, What Up Girl. Clearly, we looked at this a little late because we did a top 10, kind of.
We really didn't expect anybody to email us. Thank you, though. You
Thank
can
you so
always
much.
email us at thelonelyfanboys@gmail.com.
And we will do a better job of checking to see if we got those emails in the future.
Yes, we will.
So your question, switches. It's really tough right now. Right after the Animal Crossing episode, I felt a twinge of guilt. Because right now, it is the hardest time. It is a harder time than ever to get a Switch.
Yes.
Just because of COVID-19, they're pretty much sold out everywhere. And I don't know if you heard about this, Seth, but there's actually this person created this open source algorithm, and it's a program that lets you scan websites for an item to purchase, right?
Wow. Okay.
And so it was designed. So at the first stage, it was designed initially when the Switches were really hard to get when they first came out. And so this guy wanted to make sure like he could put in, I want to buy one Switch. And so whenever it goes on sale somewhere, I'll buy it for the regular price.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's an open source program. And so some people downloaded it, modified it, and now these scalpers are just saying, as soon as Amazon's selling them again, I want to buy as many as it'll let me.
Yep.
And so you can, right now, really the only way to get a new Switch, unfortunately, is in the secondary market, and these guys are selling them for $400, $500, and it's just ridiculous. It's a bummer.
That's true if you're ordering them online. I know that in like physical stores are getting shipments of usually a couple per week, and so you can always. I've had two friends now who have successfully like called their local Targets and been like, what day does your shipment arrive? Yeah. And can I come get one at 9 a.m? Because the part of the problem is you have to wait for that first hour, which is reserved for, at-risk people and the elderly to come do their shopping.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And so like if they have grandkids or if they just want one, then they can just go get it during that first hour. But you can wait until like 9 a.m. And I've had two friends successfully do it. You probably will have to visit multiple Targets, or Best Buys or wherever you're getting them from. But it is possible to go get a physical one in person. Yes. I will also say you can get a Switch Lite. Those seem to still be in stock.
That's true.
In most places, just a Switch Lite isn't a full Switch. It just kind of turns your Switch into a bigger Nintendo DS.
A fancy Game Boy.
Which is perfect for a game like Animal Crossing. You don't need to connect it to a TV or anything. If you're looking for just like an Animal Crossing machine, that's a great option. Yeah. Otherwise, it's a tough time right now. But I highly recommend getting the Switch when this whole thing eventually blows over or ends, and then hopefully life can return to normal. The Switch is the greatest video game console I've ever owned.
It really is. I've played so many games on it and have been introduced to games I probably wouldn't have played otherwise. And I don't know what it is about the Switch. I think it's just the handheld element, and there's still almost the shock and awe of playing a huge AAA title on a tiny little handheld, and there's that magic. We might do like a mini-sode or something just on the Switch. Maybe a whole episode. I don't know.
We'll do a whole episode on the Switch. Yeah, that'd be great.
But really quick, to answer your question, if you are able to get your hands on a Switch, I think the three biggest titles I would recommend is, first off, definitely Animal Crossing. There's a whole episode that you listen to all about why. But aside from that, my other two big pickups would have to be Mario Kart 8. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mario Kart 8 and Super Mario Odyssey.
Yes.
I think those three games, if that's all you had for a while, I think you'd be very happy and you'd have a lot of time, a lot of game time to on your hands.
I strongly agree with all three of those recommendations. We also might do an episode about, to answer the second part of your question, we might do an episode about board games. We might do another rankings episode. We're going to wait a little bit before we do that, though. I think it's that's something that's kind of nice to do for like a milestone episode. We did it for episode 5 because episode 5 was the point where we were like, if we can make 5 episodes, then we're going to really commit to this thing and make it a real thing. So whatever we kind of feel like our next milestone episode is, that might be the next time you'd see a rankings type episode. We really want this show to be like a discussion and conversation, though, less of arguing or bickering or ranking stuff against each other. That's not the energy we're going for.
But thank you so much for your question,
yes.
writer. Thank you so much for your question, writer. We really appreciate it, and we'd love to hear from more of you at thelonelyfanboys@gmail.com.
Yes, please. Joe.
Yes, Seth?
I don't know. I'm sad.
Why are you sad?
I don't have any money.
Oh.
I bought groceries today.
Oh, well, that's good. That's good. Did they have toilet paper?
They did. We're well stocked over here.
Oh,
we're
good.
Doing okay.
I'm glad. Okay. Well, tell you what. Let's go over and see if we can make some money.
Oh, I would just love that.
Let's see if we can do an ad. Let's go check it out. Seth.
Yeah, what's up?
I have something to tell you, but I don't want you to be mad.
Oh my god, okay. What's up, Joe?
I couldn't get the money back from those bets.
Oh. Joe, that's all our money. We're broke.
I know, but it's okay. I've been doing some digging, and I got us jobs.
Oh, okay. What are the jobs?
Well, I found this website where they're looking for people just like us.
Nerds?
Yep, because as we all know, nerds are the best at analyzing and predicting upcoming games and movies we want.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, as nerds, we have the best hunches, and that's what they're looking for. Hunchmen.
Hunchman?
Yeah, this one guy, he's great. Talk to him on the phone, and he's looking for 2 hunchmen to go to the Gotham docks and just stand there.
A guy.
Yeah, this guy, Bane, he must be taking COVID very seriously because he was wearing a mask and everything.
Wait a second. Bane? A mask? Gotham? Joe, we're not hunchmen, we're henchmen!
Oh no! You're totally right! What are we gonna do?
Well, tell him we can't do it.
Okay, I'll call him right now and tell him we can't do the $100 an hour.
Well, okay, hold on. $100?
Yeah, he promises competitive wages.
What? Well, if you already said we'd do it, I mean, it'd be rude to cancel.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I mean, what's the worst that could happen?
Batman! What are you doing?
Nothing, Batman. We were just. We
Not
were
another
just,
word. You're coming with me. Welcome back, everyone. We are recording live at Gotham Prison. We're going to be here for a little while, so what better thing to do than talk about some Batman?
Wouldn't it be Arkham Asylum?
Well, we're not crazy.
Oh yeah, we're crazy about Batman.
We're crazy about Batman.
Crazy for the bats.
Crazy. So, Seth,
yeah,
I think you would have to be blind to not know that I am a huge fan of the Batman. I think I've brought him up countless times in our relationship.
I don't think you're huge, Joe. I think you're average size.
Thank you. But this last week we talked about football, which is one of your favorite things. This week I want to talk about Batman.
It's your time. Let it shine. I'm so excited.
So as I said, Batman has always been my favorite superhero. Much like motorcycle games, Batman has always been in my life at some point, whether it be a cartoon, a comic book, a movie, a TV show, all of the media. I've consumed some form of Batman in my life at all stages. And so I wanted to pull out some of my favorite things and share them with you and discuss them with you, get your thoughts and feedback, and kind of maybe figure out why Batman is my favorite hero.
Yeah, I think I said this last week, but one of the first things that I ever knew about you when we first became friends was that you were a Batman fan. It was like I was over at your house and I walked into your room for the first time and it was just Batman stuff everywhere. And it was like, okay, cool. One thing about this guy, Batman fan for sure.
Yeah. So I think, why not kick it off with maybe one of the biggest things to happen to Batman.
Yeah.
Maybe a hyperbole, but really, the Dark Knight movie.
Yeah.
There had already been 5 Batman movies before that movie. 6 Batman movies live action before that. But when people think about major cinematic movies, Dark Knight is a big one.
Yeah, and Dark Knight, correct me if I'm wrong, it's actually the second in the trilogy.
It's the second in the
comes after Batman Begins.
Yes, it's the second in the Christopher Nolan trilogy.
Cool, but not a lot of people saw Batman Begins in theaters.
Yep, not a lot of people saw Batman Begins, and not a lot of people saw The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah, but The Dark Knight is an excellent film.
Yes, it's arguably the best sequel ever made.
Yeah, I mean, we'd have to throw Shrek 2 in there, but
that's very fair.
Between the two of those, yeah, for sure. Didn't this is a weird side tangent. Didn't Shrek 2 also come out in 2008? Am I totally off there? I feel like
I'm just gonna fact check that really quick. I don't know. I looked up fact check. I don't know why.
I feel
2004.
Oh, ouch.
Sorry, pal.
Oh, I was way off.
You're way off.
Maybe Shrek 3 came out in 2008. I'm digging a hole. But the point is, in my life at that time, this was middle school, I think, for us. The Dark Knight and Shrek 2 were in the same canon for me.
Sure.
They were both movies I watched in school. I did see The Dark Knight for the first time.
You saw The Dark Knight at school?
Yep. At our middle school dance, we always had an option to go watch a movie in somebody's classroom, and one of the teachers had a pirated version of The Dark Knight. And it was just being shown in his classroom because it wasn't an all-school activity or whatever. The principal did not vet it. I'm not totally sure how that got past the censors, but I remember a bunch of us just sitting in the language arts room watching The Dark Knight for the first time.
Crazy.
Watching the whole pencil scene, the one.
Yeah, oh yeah.
It comes pretty fast in the movie, I'm pretty sure. It's it's one of the first things that happens.
Yeah. Holy cow.
Yeah, so that was my first experience with The Dark Knight.
Yeah. My first experience is a little different. Jeez, man. That's horrifying.
It explains a lot about me.
I saw the movie at the same time, but I was a huge Batman fan, and I had seen a lot of the movies beforehand. I saw Batman Begins and totally loved it, and so I was so excited for the sequel. And my dad and I were taking a little trip to St. Louis, and we had originally talked about driving there from Chicago, and I convinced him that we should take a train.
Wow!
Because I always wanted to do a little train trip.
Take a train whenever you can. People out there listening at home.
Oh
no, or not.
No.
Uh-oh.
So I was just we got on the train, and what should have been maybe I think it was supposed to be a half hour to an hour long trip ended up being almost a 4-hour long trip. Just because we were a southbound train, and they have to pull off to the side every time a northbound train came.
Oh no.
Maybe vice versa. That I'm terrible with geography.
If from Chicago to St. Louis, that would have been south.
Anyways,
yeah.
So we kept having to pull over to the side, and it took forever. And my dad and I had talked about trying to go see Batman that night, and so we finally pulled into St. Louis. We were exhausted, and but I was still dying to see it. So I looked to him and I said, "Can we try to figure it out?" He still didn't have a smartphone. I definitely didn't have a smartphone. And so we had to go to the hotel, check in, and ask the concierge for a movie location, a movie theater location. And we went, and we were exhausted from the train ride, but I was blown away.
Wow.
Yeah, it is. It is not only, my favorite superhero movie, but it is my top 10 movies of all time. I absolutely love it.
It's I saw it for the first time on a little screen, but then I think later
Yeah.
I had the chance to see it on the big screen, and it's one of those movies where it fills the screen, if that makes
Yep.
sense, where like
Absolutely.
some movies just feel too small for the big screen, or some movies feel like they're trying to do so much on the big screen. The Dark Knight just fits perfectly in a movie theater. And
Yep.
maybe part of that is because like that's just when I started going to movies, and so like I it was one of the first things I saw in a movie theater, but
Yep.
it for me like perfectly exemplifies the movie going experience. Like
Yeah.
if the only movie I got to see in a movie theater for the rest of my life was The Dark Knight, I wouldn't be that sad about it.
Yep. And even before going into the movie, I knew that this movie was going to be important. I had never really experienced controversy around a movie. And so, not only like, the dark and gruesome element, or the violent elements of the movie, but just the fact that, Heath Ledger died.
Yeah.
And this was a big thing. And it had never occurred to me that for some, you're a kid, you don't really think like an actor can die.
You
And
don't really
so,
think most people can die. That's just not
right,
a thing that
exactly.
happens.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the fact that this person died, but they finished filming, and that they were going to still, show it was crazy.
Right.
But it's such a fantastic, Batman story, crime movie, superhero action movie. It's just a fantastic movie.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about the movie?
So I remember loving it. And I think after that was not my first introduction to Batman. I'd seen like Batman cartoons,
Sure.
and stuff, but I wasn't really a superhero person at all
Yeah.
before I saw The Dark Knight. I was playing sports. I was playing Magic the Gathering. I was, playing Flash games online. I was doing like lots of other stuff. But superheroes had just never really appealed to me until that point, and I had never really gotten the sort of like who would win in a fight kind of conversation
Right.
until I saw The Dark Knight, and then it was like, oh, okay. I
Yeah.
get this now. I just saw Batman do a million cool things, and I can talk about how Batman could do all those cool things in lots of different situations and lots of different scenarios. And so it's kind of all I talked about with my
Right.
friends and stuff. And that was the best part of it too, was that seeing it in school was that all my friends saw it too, and so we could just talk about it. It was awesome.
Totally. Yeah. And for younger listeners, some people got to grow up with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. As a young kid, I didn't really. There was the Spider-Man movies, but other than that, there wasn't really like these big superhero movies during my childhood. And so, both Iron Man and Batman came out in 2008, or The Dark Knight came out in 2008. And
Yeah.
so, in terms of comic book movies, this was a huge turning point. And of course, I loved Iron Man, but there was something about Batman. And, similar to you, I had been a fan or I had enjoyed Batman before that. I watched, the shows that they put on the different Warner Brothers networks, and things like that. But I had never really read many comics of Batman, or really got into it until The Dark Knight.
Yeah. I have a quick pivot for you, and stop me if this is
Okay.
something you were planning on talking about later. But
No, please.
earlier in the week, I sent you a meme that basically implied that Batman and Iron Man are the same superhero.
Yeah.
And you said you have some strong thoughts about it. I just want to hear a nuanced opinion of somebody who's clearly thought about
Sure.
this a lot. What actually makes Iron Man and Batman different? I think obviously the argument is they're both rich guys who have technology or something,
Yes.
and like that's why
Yeah.
they're the same. What makes them different?
Yeah, so, I've heard that question a lot, and I think personally, I feel like generally when people bring up that question, it's like kind of a jab, Like,
Oh, sure.
all comic books are the same. I mean, look at Batman and Iron Man. They're basically the same, character. What are you a fan of?
It has that like implied "you dumb nerd" after it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
and if I defend that question, then I'm the huge nerdy fanboy that spends way too much of my time reading Batman stuff, which I am. But it's not fun, being targeted at in like a negative light around that stuff.
Right.
But I'll answer your question. To answer
Okay.
that.
I was not trying to provoke you. I'm so sorry.
No, I did not think you were. But when you texted me that with that question, that's kind of where I went initially.
Right.
But Batman and Iron Man, and now it's even funnier that they came out the same year.
Yeah. Well, I kind of wonder if like that's maybe sort of where that started. I'm sure it started in like comic book communities well before that, but
Sure.
I think that probably didn't help them seem different. The fact that they were just like out there right at the same time for everybody to go to the movies and compare.
Right. But to answer your question, I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to it's two rich guys who have suits, and they fight crime in their suits, right? And that's the argument. That's why they're the same.
Right.
However, when you take away those suits, you have a rich man who is a tech genius. This is Iron Man. He's a tech genius. He's brilliant. He's a scientist. He can develop all this technology. It's very cool. Batman without his suit is still a ninja. He's still he trained with the League of Assassins. He doesn't need his suit to do what he does, right?
Right.
He's also a master detective who's spent countless years of his life solving crimes with different levels of advanced technology. So, if you really wanted to do the who would win in a fight, I would always put my coins toward Batman, just because if Batman figures out a way to get Tony out of the suit, he's screwed.
Right.
Because Batman will kick his butt.
My dad will beat up your dad.
My dad will beat up your dad.
Thank you. That's a really good clarification that they are like Bruce Wayne and Tony Stark are two completely different people.
Right. And
despite any similarities between Batman and Iron Man.
Yeah, and then you go into even more specifics. They both have like inner turmoil about something that happened to them. For Batman, it's something that his parents did. I mean, not did, but his parents getting murdered. For Tony, it's for his past actions. And so I think they're both very interesting situations where Batman is the result of childhood trauma and his desire to make sure that doesn't happen to anyone. For Tony, it's for his past actions, leading to the deaths of thousands of people, and it's all his fault, and he wants to fix that.
Yes, Tony does also have dead parents, but that's not his inciting incident, which is the difference between the two. Right. Okay, cool. Sorry, thank you.
That's okay.
That's just a question I've had for a long time.
Well, thank you.
And I'm glad we addressed it.
So we've talked about movies. I want to talk about some comics because that's what Batman is at its core.
Right.
Batman's been around since 1939 when he first appeared in Detective Comics issue 27.
That's so much older than I thought Batman was.
Yeah. Yep. 81 years of Batman content.
That's a wild number.
That's crazy. And so there have been so many stories of Batman, and they've all been great. Most of them have been great. Some of them have been great. But my absolute favorite comic is The Killing Joke.
Yes.
And I asked you to read it this week. It was written by Alan Moore, art by Brian Boland. It was created in 1988. It was four issues of comics, I think. Maybe a few more than that. And then in the past few years, it has been turned into a trade paperback, which means they compiled all those stories into one book.
Right.
So first off, what were your thoughts on the comic?
I mean, so this comic was written in 1988, which was the most shocking thing to me because this Batman and this Joker look and also feel like the same Batman and Joker that we have today.
Yeah.
Which I think, you had sort of told me, like, this is kind of the comic that, like, really launched the Batman that we know and love today. Yeah. But, like, it's really true. It feels like I'm sure people who write Batman stories are still coming back to this as source material, because it's got everything that you love about the Batman Joker relationship. It totally sets them up as these, like, you know, it takes them from the realm of like sort of like normal superhero stuff where it's like people who are super gifted at something and they fight a lot and they both have different fighting styles, and that's interesting enough to watch. I mean, that's a kung fu movie, right?
Right.
And that's great. I love those things. But this takes it and it makes it like legend. Like, you have these two basically immortal figures who are locked in eternal combat, and neither of them can win, and they both know it.
Yeah.
And that's where this goes from just a normal superhero story to something that I think means a lot more, and it becomes part of this fabric of American storytelling. In America, we don't really have a lot of like traditional lore and legends. We don't have a pantheon of gods that go back, you know, to ancient times, because America didn't start until the 1700s, and America has always been a mixture of a bunch of different cultures. And so there has never been just like one American mythology, kind of, except for superheroes.
Right.
Superheroes are the way that we tell stories about what's important to us. And I think this, like, The Killing Joke feels like the moment that Batman and the Joker ascended into mythos. They became legends in this story.
So what is The Killing Joke? The Killing Joke is...
After Seth is waxed poetical about...
Yes. But so the Killing Joke is obviously a Batman comic that tells the story. It's broken up in two parts. One part is Batman trying to catch Joker after he has shot Batgirl, Barbara Gordon, who is also Commissioner Gordon's daughter.
Yes.
He's shot her and paralyzed her. She's in the hospital. And after shooting her, Joker has also kidnapped Jim Gordon and has decided that if he can descend Jim Gordon into madness based on one horrible day, then everyone can easily become the Joker.
Right.
And while that is going on, you are also getting flashbacks to an origin story for the Joker, and about how he was this loser comedian who wasn't making any money, and he tried to do a heist with some guys, and it went horribly wrong.
Yep.
And his one bad day descended into madness, and so this one bad day can happen to anyone, and anyone could easily become the Joker.
Yep.
First off, I want to ask if you had a chance to read the little prelude at the beginning of the comic.
I did, yes.
Yeah, so for anyone who hasn't read it yet, the little prelude, it talks about why this was so significant, but it also talks about how half of the story is this origin story for Joker, and there was some controversy around that. Like, why would you give this almost mythical character a backstory? Why do they need a backstory? And what Tim Sale, the person who wrote the introduction, said is that this is coming from the mind of Joker. And just like in The Dark Knight, he has a million stories in his head of how he got to be there. And for me, that one little introduction opened my eyes to the world of both Batman and Joker related stories, where you can have so many different stories around these two characters, but as long as there's the essence of Batman and Joker, the possibilities are limitless. And that's so cool.
And that's perfect for the world of comic books, where there's always going to be a million different stories, and it doesn't force you to do the Disney Star Wars thing where you only designate certain things as canon and everything else is extended universe or whatever. Yeah. With Batman, everything that has Batman on it is Batman, as long as it's actually Batman. As long as you make sure that it's Batman, then it's Batman. And it sounds like gibberish, but you know what I mean.
But really, you can have someone that says, in my version of the Batman blank happens. And you can have another person that says something completely different, and you can have a third person that says, I like little bits of this, and I like little bits of this. I'm going to put them in my story, and they're all true.
And that's exactly Greek mythology, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There were a million poets across thousands of years who were like, I think in my story, Zeus is like this, and Zeus is going to do these things, but the essence of Zeus is preserved across all of these stories. So even 3,000 years later, we can still write new plays and new poems about Zeus and still go, oh, yeah, fucking Zeus, right?
So, aside from that, the introduction, we also have a fantastic comic. Again, this is one of my favorites, and I've tried to think multiple times about why it's my favorite. I look at the artwork in the comic, and it's beautiful. There are few Batman comics that I have thought were as polished and as like gorgeous as The Killing Joke.
Yeah.
And then the writing is just so. I have to say flawless.
Well, it reads like a movie.
It reads like a movie. I urge everyone who's listening to read the comic, but you can't really talk about the comic without talking about the finale of the story.
Right.
And so at the very end, Batman captures Joker, and they're outside talking.
Here's our big spoiler warning. Go no further if you want to go read the comic first, then come back.
Yes,
Great.
You can skip ahead to our next segment, but sorry. So the two of them are out in a field. It's raining, and Batman asks Joker, do we have to keep doing this? Like, why? Like, can't we just put an end to all of this? And Joker just he chuckles a little, and he says, you don't understand. Like, this is just how we have to be. It always has to be like this. And then he tells a little joke relevant to the situation, and they both share a laugh. Yeah. And then that laugh gets stronger and stronger until the page is filled with laughter and the story ends. And there's an ambiguity to that ending where you don't really know what Joker or what Batman did with Joker. Some people theorize that he killed him after that scene. But it's for me, it puts so much humanity in these two characters.
Right. Exactly.
And yeah.
I was just going to say it makes the story about their relationship rather than about their conflict.
Right. Like you see Joker at his absolute worst in this comic. Yeah. He shoots one of Batman's best friends. He shoots the daughter of someone. He strips that person naked and tortures them and sings a really morbid song at them while they're being tortured.
He also takes nude pictures of Barbara Gordon and flashes them all over this carnival. It's like really nasty stuff.
It is dark, it is horrible, and you're terrified. But in those last several panels of the comic, you almost sympathize with him, and I don't know if sympathize is the right word, but you feel something, and you immediately understand this connection, and it's heartbreaking, it's somber, and it's incredible.
Yep. And you realize that the difference between Batman and the Joker, and as we'll talk about later, Batman and Mr. Freeze and Batman and kind of every other Batman villain.
Yes.
And that really the difference in the kind of person that you become is your response when things go wrong. Because you realize Batman had a pretty bad day in his life, in his young life. Batman had maybe the worst day a person can have. And Joker also had a very bad day. Again, one of the worst possible days that a person could have, but one of them was driven mad, and one of them swore to make the world a better place. And that's what makes them different, but also the same somehow.
Yes. So definitely check out The Killing Joke. But I want to move on to another very important chapter in my childhood, and that is the Arkham video games.
Yeah.
So we talked about this a little bit last week, but Arkham Asylum, Arkham City. I didn't really play Arkham Origins, but that doesn't matter. And then Arkham Knight.
Yep.
This is a series of games that I know aren't perfect. I know have a lot of problems. I've watched the donkey reviews, tearing them apart, but I still love these games.
I mean, they're Batman video games. I feel the same way about these that I feel about like Star Wars video games, where it's just like, is it a good video game? I don't know, maybe not, but it's a Star Wars
Right.
video game, so
Exactly.
it's better than other stuff.
Yeah. So the Arkham games tell a series of stories all centered around Batman and Joker. The very first game is Batman taking Joker into Arkham Asylum and then discovering that this was a convoluted trap to get Batman stuck in the asylum, and all of the villains of the asylum could try to finish off Batman, essentially. And so you play as Batman trying to both escape and defeat all of the bad guys. It's a really nice contained story. So in the end of the first game, Joker injects himself with Bane serum and he becomes a juiced Joker and you have to fight him. It's very goofy. But Arkham City is where the story really starts to take a more mature tone and is a little more reminiscent of things like The Killing Joke. The result of Joker taking the serum is that he is now diseased and on the verge of dying. And he only has so long to live. So as a result, he takes some of his sickness and injects Batman with it, making Batman now sick. And so Batman has to fight to discover a serum to save both of them.
Right.
And in the very end, I think I talked about this all last week, but in the end, he cures himself, but doesn't have enough time to cure Joker, and Joker dies. And so I think for me, the reason that I resonated so much with these games was that this was the first video game that I was playing for the sake of the story. I was playing in order to. I was playing through these missions in order to get to find out what happened next.
Right.
And get to these cutscenes where we learn these things. And in the end, Joker and Batman have another conversation similar to The Killing Joke. Batman stands defiantly and says, "After all these years, after all we've been through, you've murdered so many people. You've ruined my life and countless others. And yet, I still would have saved you." And Joker laughs, and he laughs until he breathes his last breath and he dies. This was the first video game, where I cried.
Right.
I cried and I lost it, and I never fully recovered. I'm still dealing with it. but actually,
yeah.
The game might not have been great. There might have been repetitive levels where you're doing the same thing over and over again, but I always justify it that I got to experience that story and live through it, and it's so fantastic.
Yeah, in a way that only a video game can let you step into the shoes of your favorite character.
Exactly.
That's awesome. I have to confess, I have not played any of the Arkham games. I think. I've maybe played Arkham City, like a little bit of it. What I have played is Lego Batman, which is an excellent video game. Totally different tone though. Lego Batman,
right,
as with all the Lego games, is a very goofy version of Batman, and so.
Yes.
In that, he and Joker are kind of like friends, almost.
Oh, okay.
Which is an interesting energy, or at least they're sort of like a comic duo. Like they're they're partners on stage, and they're in on all the bits together, and they all they're just sort of like fulfilling their roles for the funniest punchline, which is also to go back to our earlier point, I think. Also a valid interpretation of the Batman-Joker relationship.
Absolutely. I mean,
because
just as much as sorry.
No, that's okay. They still feel like Batman and Joker.
Absolutely. And we just talked about The Killing Joke, where Joker is the most horrible person in the world and disgusting and vile, but there is another adaptation where he's a goofy guy and just likes to mess with Joker, or likes to mess with Batman and get under his skin, and that's what he's all about.
Yep.
and as long as you have these two forces going against each other, it always works.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's it. That transfers to the video game realm perfectly.
Absolutely. And another really fantastic aspect of the Arkham games is their the voice of Batman is Kevin Conroy, and the voice of Mark Hamill is the Joker.
Why is that important, Joe?
Because they were the voices of the same characters in Batman the Animated Series, the Warner Brothers show.
Yes.
Which I want to talk about next.
Mark Hamill, who is also Luke Skywalker, for those of you who are somehow unaware.
Luke Skywalker. He was also the Emperor in Avatar.
Yep.
He's become an amazing voice actor. For those of you who don't know,
he's also just an incredible actor, just a really
absolutely
well-rounded performer. Big idol of mine. Like the guy a lot.
Yes.
Mark Hamill, come on the show.
Please. Oh my God. I maybe don't come on the show because I would not be able to have a conversation with him.
Mark Hamill, come on the show with just Seth.
Oh, but then I wouldn't be able to talk to him.
Make up your mind, Joe. What do you want?
I want to talk about Batman the Animated Series.
Okay, we can do that.
So, before Dark Knight, before the Arkham series, after The Killing Joke, but that's not important. But there was this little show called Batman the Animated Series. It premiered shortly after the Tim Burton Batman movie premiered, and it was a TV show that chronicled, all the stories of Batman. I had you check out one episode, and from what I understand, you'd seen a few in the past as well, correct?
I have, yeah. It just used to air on Saturday mornings as part of that Saturday morning cartoon thing that would be just like on cable television. Man, remember when that was a thing? I don't even know if that's a thing anymore because I don't have cable television because who has cable?
Right. How did those kids how did we binge things? How did we used to binge things?
We waited a week every week, and sometimes they'd surprise you with a rerun, and then you'd have to wait 2 weeks for a new episode.
The worst.
It was very bad. But the wild thing about it was that like you always had like a ranking of like the shows that you liked the most. You'd watch cartoons for like 3 hours or whatever on a Saturday morning, because you were waiting for a certain show to come up. I think Batman was like in between two of my like most favorite shows, which now I honestly couldn't tell you what they were. But I watched a lot of Batman, sort of just waiting to get to something else.
Sure.
But I would never turn the TV off. I would always sit there and watch the whole Batman episode because the Batman animated series is funny. It's it's trying it wants you to think that it's trying to be very serious, and then it uses that as comedy. So like when it breaks that serious thing, it's doing it very much on purpose, and it's hilarious every time you have a character like delivering some really cool punchline and they know that it's like a cool punchline, and you've broken all like veil of reality or whatever, because like nobody talks like that, but it's the show is really self-aware, and it's great. I love it a lot, and it's also like very, I don't know, simple and like stripped down. It's not trying to like wow you with its special effects or its incredible new animation techniques or anything. It's a really solid, well-rounded, enjoyable show to watch on a Saturday morning when you're in your pajamas and you don't have to go to school, and it's great.
Definitely. And so, we've talked a lot about the Joker, but what I really appreciated about Batman the Animated Series is it introduced me and a lot of kids of my age group to a ton of Batman villains. I didn't really grow up with the Adam West Batman. I appreciate the campiness, but it wasn't my time.
Yep.
And so to watch the animated series, I was introduced to these characters, and not only that, but they decided to change some of their backstories and try to add depth and make them a little more human, like The Killing Joke did for Joker.
Yeah, I mean, and you it kind of felt like you got, at least for me, like watching it on the weekends, you got like a new villain every week, which like as a kid not knowing anything about Batman, I was like, oh yeah, of course there's a new villain every week. But like that was actually a really cool thing to do, because comics will spend a long time on a particular villain sometimes,
right?
And so you could get a particular sense of Batman from one villain but not experience them all. The show kind of runs you through the who's who of Batman's foes.
Yep. Yeah. So let's talk about one of them. So I asked you to check out Heart of Ice.
Yes, and we watched it together right before recording this episode.
Yeah. So Heart of Ice tells the origin story of Mr. Freeze, and this was one that a lot have highlighted as there hadn't really been an origin story for Mr. Freeze, and so the show created one for it, and I think it's beautiful.
It was, yeah. I mean, it was really. I think at the end of it, Mr. Freeze's first name is Victor. His name is Victor Freeze.
Victor Freeze.
And at the end of it, I think I said, like, man, poor Victor. Even though he had done some things that were very much not good. He did some very villainous things. But at the end, he's sitting there in his prison cell crying, and I'm like, man, I feel for that guy. He's another guy who had one really bad day.
Really bad day.
Yeah.
So you had talked about the comedy of the show, but there is this fantastic back and forth between real serious drama, I feel, and this lighthearted comedy, and I think it does it very successfully. Yeah. But particularly with this episode, you see that I would say more mature side of the show.
Yeah.
We get the backstory where Mr. Freeze was conducting experiments. He was trying to what is it called? He was trying to
do cryogenics.
Yes, he was trying to use cryogenics to freeze his wife, who was dying of a terminal disease. And he froze her in order to keep her frozen while he could discover a cure for her disease. The company he's working for, the lab, cuts his funding and shuts him down, and they break in while he's conducting one of his experiments, which results in him being permanently, I guess, cold-blooded to the extreme degree.
Yeah, he can't survive outside of a sub-zero temperature anymore.
Yes. And so while Batman is actively trying to stop him and capture him, he's learning about Mr. Freeze's backstory and feels horrible for him. I mean, there's the scene where he watches the security camera footage of what happened, and it ends with him being like, "My gosh, this poor man."
Yep, exactly. And I think, as all of us are going, like, "Wow, this poor man."
Yeah, exactly.
Like I would also be extremely angry, and so Mr. Freeze has taken out a vendetta against the owner of the Gotham Corporation, his former employer, and he's his whole plan is to build this giant ice cannon so he can interrupt this awards dinner and kill the guy and freeze him to death so that he can experience, because part of all of this too is that I believe Mr. Freeze's wife also dies because she the cryostasis gets shut off and then she just dies.
Yeah. And again, there are some stories where she doesn't actually die, but the company keeps it from Mr. Freeze, and Batman finds the body and allows Dr. Freeze to continue experimenting in Arkham and stuff like that. And so someone took this story, like we talked about, someone took this version of the Mr. Freeze story and has adapted it into multiple versions, going even further with their relationship, and that's great.
Yeah, and my favorite thing about this story, and then this episode in particular, is the end of it, which is where we see Mr. Freeze has frozen the businessman up to his chest or something. He's very close to completing his freezing of the guy, and then Batman, of course, heroically shows up and beats Mr. Freeze, and breaks his suit open, so Mr. Freeze has to stop fighting because he's he has to contain his cold stuff or else he'll die. There's a whole thing going on,
right?
But at the same, Batman beats Mr. Freeze. And at the same time, he pulls out the videotape of what actually happened to Mr. Freeze and to Mr. Freeze's wife and hands it straight to a reporter and is like, this businessman is responsible for death and this horrible accident. And this guy's partially responsible for everything Mr. Freeze has ever done. And the reporter just sort of takes it and it's like, okay, so that guy is going down too, which is a perfect example of the way that Batman thinks about justice, which is maybe the defining trait of Batman, is that he seeks solely to deal out justice, to just do the thing that is right, not the thing that's legal or that, you know, the law is asking him to do or that anyone else is asking him to do. He is going to do the thing that he knows is right and just. And that's what we love about the Batman.
Absolutely. So, you know, we've talked about all of the favorites of the Batman world, the Batman stories, and I just want to know, you know, I have certain reasons why I've liked stories and games and movies and things like that. But why do you think that Batman is my favorite superhero?
Right. Okay. So I've been thinking a lot about this. I think it probably has a lot to do with, I think the time that you encountered Batman. You said like Batman was like one of the first superheroes you ever encountered. Like you were like young, and I think just like the things that we encounter in our childhood mean a lot to us later on. That's a very obvious statement, but like for me, you know, I around the time that I think you started getting interested in Batman, I started getting interested in Magic the Gathering, and it was this place where childhood is weird and crazy, and growing up is like unstable all the time, and like everything's happening at once and the world is changing so fast. So when you can find those things like superheroes or card games or just like all the like nerdy stuff in general, I think for all kids, that's like, I don't know, that's the place where you go to find your stability when, like, you know, school is really hard and, you know, you're like, people are being mean to you and whatever. You can like find this like escape. We've talked about this like whole escapism thing before about like nerd culture and this fanboy culture. But I would imagine, if I had to hazard a guess, that it's the thing about Batman is that like Batman was probably there for you at some point, just like Magic the Gathering was for me, and just like Guitar Hero 3 was there for me. On my hardest days, I could always go there, and I think those are the things that you like. You never forget those things. You're never going to let them go. You're never going to stop loving those things, no matter how much Video Game Donkey tells you they're bad. So that would be my guess as to why you love Batman.
That's pretty much it. I mean, you know, around the time that I really got into Batman, I was getting bullied pretty bad in school. And I didn't have a lot of friends at the time, and so, you know, I turned to watching TV and playing video games, and I got introduced to this character, and this character taught me that, you know, the bad guys are dealing with stuff too. Yeah. And so, you know, you can stop them, you can defeat them, and at the end of the day, you can learn from them and try to become a better person through all of that.
Yeah, you can be the bigger person by realizing that they have feelings. Even though they're not realizing that you have feelings, you can be better than them.
Right.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Right. So I think that's going to do it for us on this
I got the answer right, everybody. I nailed
Congratulations.
it. 100 points for Seth.
Congratulations. I want to thank you all so much for listening. It was so fun talking about Batman and just letting it letting out all the love.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And we do want to hear your Batman stories. If anybody out there has a deep emotional connection to Batman like Joe does, or if you've had a recent connection to Batman like I have, you can email us at thelonelyfanboys@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at TLF_pod. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Lonely Fanboys, and ring the bell to be notified when we post new episodes and videos. A new video just went up on Monday on the channel, all about the Minnesota Twins, narrated by yours truly, Seth Campbell. So you can check that out. I'm sure we'll be making all sorts of content on that channel. Thank you to Alight the Night for our opening theme song, Consequences.
Thanks so much for listening, everybody. Good night.